I need y'all to understand that I'm not acting normal about the Other Bennet Sister. I feel physically ill after watching it, knowing I'd never be able to watch it again for the first time. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I have not felt that same sensation for a period drama since I watched like North and South in 2004. There was something so nostalgic about this, like a mid-2000s period drama that made me like ache for that time and how those series made me feel. And suddenly I was 16 again watching this period drama in my bedroom on my laptop. And like I'm not going to cry, but it's crazy the effect that The Other Bennet Sister has had on so many of us. I've watched The Other Bennet Sister around 8 to 10 times now, and it's not for the reason you think. Welcome back to Regency Rumors. I'm Kayla, and here on the channel I talk about period dramas, history, and historical fiction, and all I'm going to say is that this is our new period drama boyfriend, okay? I feel like we have all been really giddy, kicking our feet watching The Other Bennet Sister. I knew one day it was going to be the grumpy northern British men that were going to come back into fashion, and it has arrived in the most delightful, nerdy way through Tom Hayward. The Irish men have taken over period dramas, and I am not mad about it. He's also in the Young Sherlock series out on Amazon Prime, and I think he's going to go really far in period dramas, and I love him as this like northern grumpy poetic lawyer in The Other Bennet Sister. I've talked about this series a lot on the channel. I've been looking forward to this for months. I know a lot of us period drama besties have been waiting for this even more than Netflix's Pride and Prejudice. So The Other Bennet Sister is a continuation story of Pride and Prejudice, specifically about Mary Bennet finally giving the overlooked bookish middle sister her own narrative arc. Even though the budget clearly wasn't on like the Netflix side, and the costuming at times is giving Timu Bridgerton, there is something so nostalgic and real about it. I won't go into any spoilers, try not to. I'm going to be doing a separate video around the character of Mary in The Other Bennet Sister compared to Pride and Prejudice and other characters, which is a different conversation. So just know that the show isn't perfect. I will get into that really soon, but it will be in a different video. So this is going to be more about looking at this period drama following a similar blueprint of period dramas from the 90s and 2000s, with the pacing, with the dialogue, with the color grading, and why that it is working so well with audiences outside of like the differences or similarities to Pride and Prejudice. A collective frustration has mounted among viewers and creators concerning a hyper-polished look with period dramas and fast pacing of modern TV and film that's made viewers nostalgic for old television where settings feel real and the people in them look like they belong in that time period. I do think there was this unsaid expectation for a new Wuthering Heights film that might deliver the historical grimness and frankness on race and classism and generational trauma expected from a Bronte story that was going to feel different from the adaptations in the past that kept missing the mark. I feel like so many viewers to these remakes over and over kept being like, you know, we're not asking for this, like we didn't desperately need this adaptation again, but fine, if you're gonna make it, can you make it like this, please? Can you kind of correct the wrongs that happened in the past or cover this topic that they didn't, or bring in some diversity, because people of the past were all different races. And time again, especially for period dramas, I feel like audiences are ignored and these studios are like, no, we've seen the book talk steaminess and the Instagram aesthetics and how addicted you all are to scrolling, so trust us. We're just gonna try and deliver something like that, but in film form. And then we're all like, why did you think we all wanted that? Like, if we wanted to scroll on our phones or read a steamy book, that's what we do. So many shows in the last 5 years especially have leaned into watered down dialogue for casual viewing while we scroll on our phones, and dark and drained lighting for who knows what purpose, to make it seem more dramatic or edgy. I have no idea, but people repeatedly say they don't want that. And these crazy sped up storylines that either seem like soap operas or, you know, the human connections on them are so manufactured that they feel like copy and pasted from hundreds of other shows in the past. Against this backdrop, the Other Bennet Sister has emerged as an antidote, a deliberately bright, unoptimized return to slow, character-driven storytelling that, like Mary says in I think episode 5, it's become a much-needed tonic for viewers exhausted by fast-paced media. The first time I watched The Other Bennet Sister, I was like, this plotline is really simplistic. Like, there's not a ton going on. It's not like there's a bunch of like crazy cliffhangers. And it's not that I was expecting like it to be action-packed with it being in the Austen world, but it hit me like a ton of bricks halfway through watching it. Like, why am I expecting this to be moving faster? I love cozy stories. I love slow stories of self-discovery and character building, and yet I'm sitting here in anticipation of something else should be going on in this. And I like, what on earth is that feeling? It's so frustrating. The reason I feel like it felt so jarringly peaceful is that modern media has essentially been re-engineering our brains for maximum retention. We're, living in this age of like TikTok brain, where streaming platforms use a dopamine reward to keep us hooked. We've been conditioned to resist stillness or slowness in our media, which is why a slower plot line can feel like a bit of a jolt to our nervous system, which is what I felt like watching The Other Bennet Sister. And let me tell you, if you really want to connect, really see Mary as a character, then you have got to watch this without your phone. And I'm not like telling you what to do. I'm just saying, like, if you're like, oh, I love period dramas for like the subtle glances between people and some of those awkward moments and how like body language can tell so much outside of dialogue, then this series is for you. There's not one, but 2 scenes of a man rolling up the sleeves of his billowing shirts, which you will not see if you cut your nose in your phone. Mary Bennett's journey is so well paced through this, from, being seen as an awkward, isolated, intellectually performative sister at Longbourn. And then with this, we see her slow burn journey out of isolation. The show does something really beautiful, I think. It takes her out of the shadows of her sisters and drops her into a bigger city where people actually get to see her shine for her own qualities. It's not just about giving her a change of scenery. It's about Mary finally finding a circle that appreciates her mind instead of mocking her in some way. What's so empowering about this adaptation is watching Mary figure out what she actually likes about herself and slowly shaping a life that she actually wants to live. We get to follow her on these genuine adventures where she meets fascinating new people. And yes, there are some potential love interests that will absolutely have you swooning and pining and yearning. But the best part of this series is that none of her story is like revolutionary in a high concept way. It's not like you're going to watch this and be like, wow, this is the most profound period drama ever, and it completely reinvents the wheel. Like, there's nothing about this that is like overly new in any way, but it just feels like this refresher from period dramas that have come before, and it harnesses some of the best parts of them and then brings them into 2026. Mary's is an experience of life that any of us could have. It feels so charming and uplifting because it's rooted in the reality of being an introvert who struggles with like the normal rules of society. The dialogue feels historical enough to keep you immersed in a period drama, but it's written with a modern sensibility that never feels snooty or inaccessible. And because it's a classic period piece, it leans heavily on what the genre does best, which is the power of lingering looks. So much of the story is told through micro expressions and facial movements that do all the heavy lifting when the characters stay silent. It forces you to actually watch, and it keeps you hooked on the story based on the emotions from their faces. I do not have enough words of praise for Ella Broccolieri's performance. She makes Mary feel so incredibly real. We're used to seeing period drama leads being these effortlessly beautiful, ethereal, like English roses who are naturally confident, but Mary is so human. And we know, like, once the camera cuts on those older period dramas, that etherealness goes away. I remember Kate Winslet talking about how important it is for girls to know that, like, once she gets done with filming or in an award show, she goes and puts on a big pair of sweatpants and she like farts on the couch and a pimple pops up and those sorts of things. I think it was something to that effect. And so a lot of these period dramas like to leave out those more like physical manifestations that aren't attractive on women. And I don't know how to say this in a way that I'm like, Ella Broccolari is beautiful. What I mean is that some of her facial expressions and things like her rosacea, I love that they decided to keep them in because it made her seem far more human. It's moments that typically would be cut out from other period dramas, I feel like, because it'd be like, oh, like this isn't making her look, like contemplative as she's walking through a field and holding a book and eating an apple. The kind of the way that they had Keira Knightley in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice, which I love her in that, but she's drop dead gorgeous in every single moment. And even when she's mad or like looking in another room, it's very intentionally meant for her to kind of, look hot or ethereal in those moments. And I love that in the Other Bennet Sister, they let her have some normal facial movements. She has these physical manifestations of her anxiety, like, itching when she's nervous that we almost never see on screen for women. Seeing her like navigate confusion, intimidation, a full range of messy emotions on her face is so incredibly healing. The fact that they kept her rosacea, and I've got rosacea, so I was feeling all the feels, and she had minimal makeup on and they relied on giving the show good lighting instead, just highlights how naturally gorgeous she was. The BBC really took a back to basics approach here, giving us 10 full episodes to let the story breathe, because the pacing is slower. I feel like the romance never felt rushed. There were these classic, like, silly moments of interrupted conversations and miscommunications and, like, girls giggling behind doors trying to hear conversations, but that all felt very intentional to like lean into older period dramas. For the most part, though, it felt like to me it was the BBC saying, we're not going to dumb down the dialogue or modernize Mary just to accommodate the people that are going to be looking on their phones. They trusted that if they made something high quality, people would stay glued to the screen to catch every look and every word between her and other characters. Watching a show like this made me realize just how much other like modern content is actually stressing us out. Like our nervous systems are shooketh. We've been so used to the business of stories in film and television, the constant need to grab our attention every 3 seconds, that we've forgotten what it's like to just sit with a character in a simple story. So Barry Salt, a pioneer in statistical film analysis, spent decades meticulously timing shots to track how cinema has sped up over time. In the golden age of the 1930s and 40s, the average shot length was 8 to 11 seconds. But as Salt's data shows, by the 90s and 2000s, that average plummeted to around 4 seconds. And today, in the era of algorithmic optimization, we're often looking at like a frantic 2.5 seconds per shot. Visual storytelling has evolved to capture our shrinking attention spans, and then we believe that stories should be sped up because of this. Film theorist David Bordwell points out that modern filmmaking uses rapid-fire cuts and constant close-ups to prevent your eye from ever resting. This constant reorienting is what makes a 2.5-hour action film feel like you're in a high-speed chase with your nervous system. When this hook-driven style becomes your baseline, your brain starts to associate speed with value in storytelling. If a shot doesn't change every 3 seconds, your brain stops receiving its reward cue and starts screaming that it is bored. Which is why if you're like, why do I care so much that this shot is lingering so long on a group of sheep in a period drama, even though I love this sort of thing, then that is your answer. There's times when I've tried older period dramas and I've been like, I know I'm going to love this. And then for whatever reason, my brain is so focused on like, why is this so slow? We've been conditioned to see, dead time or more slower pacing in stories, those quiet moments that characters might have as a failure of the show to keep us entertained. Look, I don't know if The Other Bennet Sister keeps within those 2.5 or 4 second scene changes, and it's got a couple of like dramatic cliffhangers and, dramatic kind of Mary being picked up in the rain with a sprained ankle type moments. But I really love that it feels like it refuses to play this retention game of like trying to be cool with modern music or more modern costumes or like Gossip Girl storylines, and no judgment to Gossip Girl and those type of CW shows, but there is a time and a place. By leaning into the slower pace of some of the 2000 era period dramas, it forces us to step out of that high, neural arousal state and actually engage with a mini series once again. One that isn't creating crazy storylines to get a second season. In my video, The Americanization of British Period Dramas, I talked about that we're seeing a massive shift where British shows are being molded to fit the demands of an American audience. This often means sacrificing those like subtle, quiet stories for heightened drama and a much faster paced narrative. To me, this like very simple 10-part series has become my favorite period drama in years because it dares to lean on classic period dramas that have come before it, but focus on characters that don't need this massive big story. Mary experiences people that live in normal, cozy townhouses in London or attend small parties or have little game nights with friends. Some of them have to work for a living instead of being a second or third son with nothing to do with their time. There's also something so incredibly refreshing about the way this series handles its visual palette. By leaning into thoughtful lighting and organic color grading, the show allows the atmosphere to do the heavy lifting of making everyone look great, rather than relying on, like, dare I say, iPhone face or just like, Instagram glossiness for actors that plague so many period dramas these days. We aren't being distracted by obvious like lash extensions or acrylic nails or heavy-handed makeup. It feels raw and natural and kind of reminiscent of that mid-2000 era of period dramas where the focus was on, the natural flush of someone's cheek or the way that sunlight hit a room. Speaking of the exact opposite of that, if you've seen my recent video reacting to the new Netflix Pride and Prejudice teaser trailer, you'll know exactly the kind of like modern gray dark aesthetic that I'm talking about. People are already in the comments complaining about how washed out and drab it looks with the costumes, completely swallowed by this like lifeless gray filter, and that there's going to be a lot of monotoned colors in the fabrics, maybe. Let's hope not. It's just a teaser trailer, but it's kind of worrying that it might be going in that direction. It's as if these studios genuinely believe we won't take a period drama seriously unless all the like joy and color are sucked out of the frame, completely ignoring the fact that audiences keep begging for more like vibrant, brighter worlds. Even with The Other Bennet Sister having far lower of a budget than anything on Netflix. Like, Mary's dresses look like they were DIY'd with a hot glue gun and a trip to like Michael's or Hobby Lobby or The Range over here in the UK. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's proof that when a story is this earnest and well-paced, we'll happily forgive a bit of the strange styling because we're actually invested in the human beings wearing the clothes, not just the spectacle of the set. I'm looking at you, Bridgerton, with that insane hot air balloon scene in season 3. If we can have a bit of color and the people look like that they fit in the time period, then we can forgive some of the things that don't work as well. The Other Bennet Sister also manages to dodge that like museum feeling that so many historical shows can fall into. Usually when we see these stories filmed on location, sometimes they can feel weathered and antique. So I'm thinking of like Pride and Prejudice 2005. And it's like a subconscious thing, but I feel like it does happen where like a couple shots at Pemberley, the stone looks quite weathered, or like how weathered and dated the interiors at Longbourn looked, like creaking floorboards and dulled antiques, which that subconsciously tells our brains that we are looking at something in the past. It's meant to look weathered and old, when in reality, it would have looked like there was a newness to it, like they were living in the time and not like these things were antique. The Other Bennet Sister captures that same kind of like vibrant newness that made the 2022 Emma feel so like alive and real. Even though Emma was bold and historically incorrect all over the place, like outside of the more historically accurate costumes, the costumes very well done. But like setting-wise, we totally forgave it because, one, it had this continuous flush style throughout the film, and two, where everything from the fabric shops and the greenhouses to the carriages, they looked like it was brand new and being used in the present moment. And Mary's story achieves that same, like, present in the past feeling. Even with a way smaller budget and those occasional like Bridgerton-esque pops of color here and there and her bright green dress, the streets of London and the townhouses feel like they are inviting modern spaces for the time rather than stuffy sets. You actually want to live in this version of the Regency era because the shops and rooms feel simplistic and functional as if they exist in the moment. It creates this incredible sense of being physically present in her journey, proving that when you make a world feel this tangible and the landscape feels real, the audience connects with it on a much deeper, more intimate level, with some of the most heartfelt scenes also being out in the gorgeous landscapes. So you understand why Mary is going through such an emotional journey, because what she's seeing in front of her, it's almost just as gorgeous on our screen as it is for her, which is why we go, oh my gosh, like she's having this experience. So much of The Other Bennet Sister is her figuring out what she really feels about life and letting experiences outside of her books emotionally affect her. And to me, that should be done through a vibrant world that feels somewhat realistic. And I feel like they've delivered that here. A couple of weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I would love to watch something I've never seen before, something that's charming, a different pace of period drama that's not going to stress you out too much. No battle scenes, no high drama. And I found this vibrant, slow, meaningful French period drama called The Taste of Things, which was, I think, one of the foreign films selected for the 2023 Academy Awards. The first 30 minutes of the film, I think, is just people cooking in real time in a bright Victorian kitchen at a French chateau. There is barely any speaking. There's no music. You're just watching people pour a lot of time and effort into making these rich meals on a summer afternoon. My TikTok brain kept being like, what's happening? Where is the plot? And then when I finally accepted that this was going to have a slower pace, I started to absolutely fall in love with it. Like The Other Bennet Sister, it rejects that dull, weathered antique filter, and it creates this culinary world that's rich and has warm, sunlight colors and makes the past feel immediate and alive. The audience is asked to simply observe the vibrant colors of the ingredients and the materiality of the cooking process, the steam, the sounds of the pans, and the silent cooperation and chemistry between the cooks. This, it's called materialist filming approach, and it's a direct counter to overstimulation in modern media. Some viewers apparently walked out of the screenings and they found the bright, meticulous focus on pots and pans painfully slow or boring. However, to me, that reaction just highlights the terrifying degree to which our senses have been rewired to expect constant highs and lows in visual storytelling. Shows like The Bear, or just fast-paced jump cuts that we see on TikTok of people making food, where it's shaky cams and the clock is ticking and have to turn on the knob here and put the pan on really fast and then throw the butter in, and it just feels like it's a very fast-paced thing of showing the process of making something that traditionally has been you're meant to take your time with it, right? But with The Taste of Things, it finds such a heartfelt harmony to its pacing. It takes exactly as long as it needs to tell its story, much like a perfectly cooked dish. By watching The Other Bennet Sister, I've realized how much we need slower media or cozy stories, bringing back period dramas that deal with warmth and heartwarming internal stories that are less about having action or drama-filled storylines, but realistic ones of like miscommunication and hard chats with loved ones and things about life and death and happiness, and it be okay that that is all of the story. If you look at the conversations happening online right now among people who have already finished the series, the one word that keeps coming up over and over again is healing. Watching Mary navigate her own unhurried journey towards self-love and quiet confidence and genuine happiness is incredibly profound. Whether or not this is an accurate representation of a Jane Austen character or not. I think even with this just being like a standalone with inspirations of Pride and Prejudice, I think this is a really sweet, profound story. To me, it is this reminder that these slow, earnest stories of self-discovery are just as important and just as impactful as the dark, gritty, hyper-realistic, intense dramas that are all over our screens. I've recently cried watching The Pit, and then I bawled watching The Other Bennet Sister, and both can be considered meaningful media to be taken seriously. And to me, the fact that The Other Bennet Sister manages to deliver this deep emotional resonance while Mary is, walking around in a hot magenta Spencer and surrounded by bold, bright colors and sunlit cinematography is the ultimate proof of concept. This should be proof to studios that a show does not need to be washed in a bleak, gray, lifeless filter to be taken seriously as a meaningful adaptation. A lighter, sweeter story can still be a profound, deeply moving piece of media. Ryan Gosling said something recently on his press tour for Project Hail Mary that it's not the industry's job to beg people to watch something and convince them it's good through like viral social media moments. It's their job to make things we as an audience actually want to see. By focusing on their bread and butter, classic period drama style, the BBC proved that if they make it, we will definitely watch it, and then we will become obsessed. The overwhelming popularity of this series so far is proof that when studios actually listen and deliver the exact kind of sincere, unhurried storytelling we have been begging for, the audience will absolutely show up and praise it in kind. Well, that is it for me, guys. What did you think about The Other Bennet Sister? There's a lot of people that really, really love it, and there's some people that feel like it's not a great representation of Mary from Pride and Prejudice. And my next video is going to be, my next videos is going to be exploring why I think that this Mary fits a lot more than people think it does. It's not perfect by any means, and there's some characters in this that I feel like have gone too caricature-ish, too cartoonish, bit too far. But we will explore that in the next video. But I really think that their choices to just make a really good BBC period drama has made all the difference in this kind of lower budget period drama to be so popular with audiences. I think it shows that the BBC are the best at what they do, at making period dramas, and they don't need to have a Bridgerton budget in order to do so. Well, I'm gonna go put on The Other Bennet Sister for the, I downplayed how many times that I watched it at the beginning of this video, and I don't want to say because I feel really embarrassed that I've watched it so many times, but I feel like so little media out there that has this type of pacing, then you only have a few things to really choose from. It's this or like the 1995/2007 Persuasion for kind of slower storytelling and period dramas. So here's your sign, BBC. Keep it coming. Okay, bye.